Let me preface by saying that this is a re-upload. I released this video earlier this morning and it had 100k views after just 2 hours, and then YouTube decided to age restrict it. Worst nightmare situation for a YouTuber, but I guess it is what it is, and I greatly appreciate all of you that have it in you to watch it again. Enjoy. I have returned, and well, let's just say it was one heck of an adventure. Not only did I get to attend a private press presentation for BG3 in which I saw some pretty crazy stuff, much more than what they showed you all in the panel from Hell, but I also got some hands-on time with the release version of Baldur's Gate 3. Unfortunately, we were not allowed to record our experience, so I will be using early access footage from the panel from Hell and the new trailer, and also note that I will be keeping this video generally spoiler-free from a story perspective. If you've had no problem watching all of the panels up to this point, minus the major spoiler section in the recent panel, which I will not talk about, this video should be fine for you. If you don't want to see anything gameplay spoiler-wise, perhaps just consider listening to this video and not watching, because I will be showing some footage of a character walking around the city, for example. Chapter markers are below. I do talk about some really interesting stuff in the second half of the video as well, so make sure you at least skip around and listen to different sections. Let's get this out of the way now in a non-spoiler way, and that is, how does the full version of the game feel compared to early access in terms of content? Many of us have played early access for so many hours now, and many of you, including myself, have expressed some burnout with the content that we have access to, and understandably so. Well, in the press conference, Sven told us that the official version of the game should offer around 33% more / changed up content in the Act 1 area. And I gotta say, after playing for around 4 hours or so, that number does feel pretty spot on. The early parts of Act 1, including the tutorial area, definitely felt very, very familiar, but there was enough renditions and changes to where I felt motivated and excited to once again want to play through all of the content. Even in the tutorial area on the Nautiloid ship, there's a completely reworked section, and I mean completely. So overall, yes, you will know where to go if you've already played early access, but the changes to some of the cinematics, the items, the visuals, noticeably looking the best that they've ever looked, all made it very exciting for myself. And you all probably learned in the panel that Will's character has been completely reworked, and I did actually make it to him in my time that I was playing, and Larian was certainly not kidding. Much better writing, a much better overall presentation, and I think this rendition of Will absolutely boost his numbers in terms of popularity. And some of you also saw the scene with the Dark Urge origin character in Gale, and I'll talk about the Dark Urge here shortly, but new cutscenes like that in places where you did not expect them were of course unexpected, but also very fun and engaging for players who have already been playing early access. So yeah, I think most of you will still very much enjoy the first section of this massive game. I also want to point out that the game actually did run smooth for all of us that had that hands-on experience, and what you saw in the panel, if you saw any issues with FPS or anything, was more so technical issues relating to the presentation setup. So Larian basically rents out like castles and turns them into live stages and land centers in a matter of days, and they're somehow able to put on a show. So good performance for me and the others that I talked to. I wouldn't worry too much about what you saw in the panel in this recent presentation, and also any of the blurry footage that you saw is the result of Larian's streaming bitrate, which may have been understandably a bit limited. All right, let's jump backwards a little bit now and start with game difficulty. Now, I played on normal or balanced because I was worried that I would end up being stuck in one area for too long, and I really wanted to make sure that I saw things. Do note, though, that you can change difficulty on the fly in this game. So the game's 3 difficulties are Explorer, Balanced, and Tactician, and I did write down notes on their descriptions. Explorer is described as a narrative experience, placing story before combat. Balanced, which would be normal, is a balanced adventure full of challenging choices, and Tactician is a tough campaign emphasizing strategic combat. In the Explorer mode, friendly NPCs are going to be harder to kill, trader prices are at a 20% discount, and you start the game with a +2 added to your already +2 proficiency bonus. And for those who don't know 5th edition that well, adding 2 to your proficiency bonus number is a pretty big power boost. In Tactician mode, it really seems like Larian has done it right, and they gave it some thought, so it's not just enemies with boosted armor class and hit points. In Tactician and BG3, enemies will be using more deadly versions of their normal weapons and ammo, such as instead of using arrows, they may be using fire arrows. Enemies will more actively attack your more squishy characters, so positioning becomes of the utmost importance on Tactician. Larian has also made some of the battlefields a bit more challenging as they place items such as explosive barrels in areas where your party is more likely to end up being in. So I really like what I heard and what I saw, and I can't wait to try out Tactician myself. And now on to perhaps many people's favorite topic, and that is my hands-on experience with character creation. And excuse me, I'm already losing my voice. The script is extremely long, and I've just been repeating it all day out loud to try to make sure things make sense. So let's just say that I was the last creator slash streamer slash journalist person in the room to leave the character creator, because I was honestly blown away. Your boy was sitting here in awe and taking notes like I was a reporter for a major news organization on the verge of a breaking story. The character creator in BG3 is phenomenal, and some of you guys, of course, saw a bit of it in the panel, but let me share everything that I experienced. Starting off with the new system for ability points. So I did not see an option to roll for stats, but the major change here is that you can now put a +2 and a +1 into any 2 ability scores that you so choose. So this is even a bit different than Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. There are no more ability score bonuses that are locked to specific races. When you get to the ability score tab, you select what ability you want to have a +2 in and what ability you want to put a +1 in. You can still somewhat play it like the old way if that's what you actually want to do. Every race in this game can now be an optimal choice for whatever class that you want to play. I also did get confirmation that the variant human will not be a choice, at least not on launch. It's also important to let you all know that you can respec in this game. Once you unlock a certain character whose name starts with a W, I don't want to get into too many spoilers here, that you can basically meet early on in Act 1. And this is really big news, but unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to experience it myself, so I don't have a ton of details for you. Having this option, though, will allow everyone to not be scared to try things out. You can try out multi-classing. You can try out specific subclasses that you may be unsure of. Have fun with your build and don't stress out too much about making a bad choice because you can redo it all. From what I'm told from a few people who played it, this also includes your class and your origin and companion characters' classes. Also, there's going to be Hireables in the game, so it doesn't look like you're going to be able to make a full custom party right off the bat unless you use a workaround that will probably work when the game comes out. But more so, you have to run into these hireable characters. We don't really know the details behind it, but Sven did say that there are 12 of them, each one representing a different class, and these are all customizable. I'm not sure, like, if you run across, like, the rogue hireable, if you can turn that rogue into a druid, or you have to actually find the druid one. Not entirely sure yet, but we'll try to find more information as soon as possible. Moving on to body type selection on the Origin and Custom Character tab, and actually the body type shows up on most of the tabs. And I'm happy to be the one to help get rid of confusion from the Community Update 20 and announce that the body type selection that you see on this tab is the same body type selection that you get when you make it to the Appearance tab later on in the Character Creator. The reason why Larian shows it on 2 tabs is so you can get a quick idea as to what your character can look like right off the bat. Now, what I noticed with the body types are that some races have only 2 choices, while others have 4. Half-orcs, dragonborn, dwarves, halflings, and Githyanki, for example, are basically one size fits all, and the only thing you can change is if you want a male-looking body or a female-looking body. So basically, boobs or no boobs and wider shoulders. Now, many of the other races actually have 4 choices, 2 of them being this masculine and feminine normal height but still fit looking character, and then the other 2 choices let you jack your character right up to be this tall, muscular looking character. All right, now I'm going to rapid fire off the options that were available for the Drow race, but keep in mind that different races in this game do offer different customization options. So for the Drow race, on the General Appearance tab, we had 4 body types. You can choose Identity, which is male, female, or non-binary / other. There were 8 total voices to choose from, 7 faces, a ton of different skin colors. I couldn't even count them all. 10 different scarring options. There's a maturity slider, which is actually a slider. freckle quantity slider, freckle intensity slider, vitiligo pigmentation slider, which is really cool that Larian put that in the game for those of you that have that skin condition. And there was also a genitals option, of which there were basically 2 choices, technically 3, but the first choice is called default. Now, I did check the game's settings, and there is a show genitals filter, just so you guys know. Next for the drow was the body art section, of which I found 20 different tattoo styles, where you can also customize the tattoo color and also piercing style, but I unfortunately didn't write down how many piercings. For the eyes section, all of the races get access to being able to be heterochromia, so 2 different eye colors, which was really fun to mess with, especially as a Dragonborn character. And of course, the choices for colors are endless. There was also a makeup section where you choose eye makeup style, of which I saw 17 choices for the drow. This section also allows for makeup color customization and even lip tint. For the hair options, holy crap, we have a ton of different hair options in this game, and I found 88 different choices for the drow, and it might be the same for many of the other races as well, but regardless, 88 is a ton of choice. We of course can also customize hair color, of which you have 3 different colors in your hair: the natural color, your highlight color if you want to have highlights, and then also gray intensity. There's also a facial hair section, although Larian does seem to be staying true to the lore, as elves cannot have facial hair. I did jump over to the humans for this particular section, and I counted 19 different facial hairstyle options, and you can customize the color here, but it's a bit more grounded than in the hairstyle section in terms of color choices. To demonstrate how it may be different when you change it from race to race, for example, the Dragonborn can actually choose crests, they can choose a chin style, and also a jaw style. So overall, the character creator was a blast to mess around with, and I ended up making a Dragonborn myself, as it was just so much fun messing with the different scale options and patterns. Now let me talk a bit about the origin characters, of which Karlach and the Dark Urge have been announced, and I did write down both of their descriptions. Karlach has escaped 10 years of service in the Hells with nothing but the axe on her back and the infernal hell engine blazing furiously where her heart used to be. And we already know that Karlach's canon character is supposed to be this good-hearted character that's fighting for good. And then we have the huge reveal of the day, in my opinion, which was the Dark Urge choice, of which, of course, I did end up selecting as a Dragonborn character. The description for the Dark Urge reads as, "You remember nothing but a path paved with blood. Unimaginable cruelty whispers to you from within. Can you escape it? Would you even want to?" So the Dark Urge is this fully customizable origin character that you can choose any class or race with and have any appearance style that you want, but you don't get to choose the character's backstory. Now, discovering what that story is what this origin character is about. And the cool thing is that your actual Dark Urge character doesn't know their backstory either, but they are getting visions and hearing voices, etc., that are starting to reveal this horrifying past. The Dark Urge character has urges to kill, and they feel a bit like a serial killer, but you, the player, do get the opportunity to resist these urges, or you can, of course, give in. Now, without getting too spoilery, I did write down some of the dialogue options for one of the early scenes that I experienced. And in this particular vision, the narrator says, "Violent yearnings overwhelm all other thoughts. Who could you possibly be to be their vessel?" And the choices were, in a more summarized version, to think upon your heritage, contemplate your craft, probe your mind. The answer is simple, you must be death itself. And the last choice was, the answer is bleak, you were once awful. Really cool choices that lead to different scenes. Now, the last thing I'll say about this character, as I did get to see and experience more than you all did in the panel, this origin story and this origin character is brutal. This is the dark of the dark, and my character did something in the game which was represented with full cinematics that actually had me turning the other way, which I don't do too often. So be prepared for a dark, horrifying, but extremely intriguing experience. It's really such a great idea for an origin character that allows customization. And well, there's also some really interesting theories out there as to who people think that this dark origin character may actually be. And of course, Harbs was talking a bit about this on his Twitter at Harbs, but I'll leave it at that for potential spoilers. Now, I should also mention that each origin gets their own little intro, but I think all of them end up in the same area on the Nautiloid chip in the tutorial, but I can't say for certain because I wasn't able to try them all. I wish I had answers to all this, but there really was just so much going on this day. Now let me quickly talk about the classes in the game, of which there are 12 different classes with 46 subclasses to choose from. Some of those subclass choices coming at a later level though. Everything looks fantastic here, and Larian even put in these little animated scenes that represent the class that you select. For example, when you click on the druid class, your druid will create a leaf storm around them, and the wizard will end up doing like a really cool spell. I, of course, chose to play as a monk because that is the only class that we have not been able to play in early access. I remember Sven saying something in the panel about him liking the monk when he never traditionally would play one, and honestly, I agree with this statement 100%. Monk would not be my first choice for a class, but after trying it out in the lower levels of Act 1, and also seeing it in the panel gameplay, this class is a riot to play. The Shadow Step ability is so much fun if you play as a Shadow Monk. You're constantly moving around the battlefield, managing your key points, getting more hits in than most other classes get. It's a really engaging class, and I think that many of you are going to really enjoy it. Now, the subclasses for the Monk are Shadow, Open Hand, and 4 Elements, but I chose Shadow because of that Shadow Step ability, which allows you to teleport from shadow to shadow. It's really cool and fun. And I also talked to Cass from Fextra Life, who was playing a Dragonborn monk as well, and he said that he was having such a great time and he made it much further than I actually did. So the character creator, all the races, classes, appearance, customization, etc., extremely well done, especially considering the insane cinematic nature of this game, where when you change something, it also needs to be represented in cinematic form. Larian did a lot for the type of game that they're creating here, and they definitely went above and beyond. Since I just talked about classes, I think this absolutely is related to that in some way. I do want to mention that in the community update 20, which was like last week or something like that, we were given a list of spells coming to 1.0. Well, I got great news for you all. There's actually much more spells than just what that list was showing, as I got to witness some of these spells firsthand, and you guys are going to be really happy to hear, all of you D&D players, that I saw the shield spell in action, which was pretty sweet. I saw Banishment, Arcane Lock, and Wall of Fire. Larian says that there are over 600 spells coming to the game, so yeah, you better get ready. Now, Arcane Lock was really cool. I didn't use it myself, but I did watch Sven use it. I feel like utility spells in this game are going to be a really big thing, especially for players that want to focus more on that type of gameplay, maybe over just like a purely combat-focused run. Shield worked just like a D&D player would expect it to work. Very powerful reaction spell, and yeah, it's going to be great fun trying out everything and all of these new spells for the first time. And speaking of first time, this brings me to crafting. Now, I don't know all of the crafting in the game, but I did spend a lot of time staring at the new Alchemy tab, which presents itself at the start of the game. So with Alchemy, you basically turn ingredients into elixirs, poisons, and weapon coatings. This was broken into the categories of potions, elixirs, grenades, and coatings. And once you find what I'm assuming is a recipe for these, the list of potions, elixirs, grenades, and coatings that you can create will of course get much larger. I only got to see one craftable item under each of those categories. Now, to make a health potion, you need to find or create Salt Rogue's morsel and then combine it with any suspension that you find in the game, and then you get yourself a health potion. To make a fire elixir, you need dragon egg mushrooms and any salt that you can find in the game. To make fire grenades, you need fire, amber, and salt. And to make an oil of accuracy, it requires... Actually, I can't read my own writing as I was taking notes really fast while I was playing. Now, you also get to craft and create these ingredients, as there was also a section to create sublimates, salts, essences, ashes, vitriols, and suspensions. So, at least for the alchemy, it seems like there is a lot to it. I'm actually really excited to know that picking up ingredients while out exploring, such as mushrooms, will have a nice use, a purpose. So make sure to pick up everything. If you're into this type of thing, loot all the barrels, etc. Or actually, of course, you don't have to, as you can always buy many of these items from the vendors. On to the next topic. So I took a lot of notes, as some of you have probably realized by now, and I'm going to tell you a few non-spoiler things that I discovered that I don't think were revealed in the panel. Starting off with a keychain. All of your keys in BG3 will automatically go onto your keychain. Basically, you double click on the keychain in your inventory, and then you can see all of your keys nicely organized in their own little section. There's also an alchemy pouch for all of your alchemy supplies and ingredients. And many of you will be pleased to hear that I found a camp supply pack where all of your food and camp supplies can be stored into their own container in your inventory. But actually, to be honest with you, I only stored actual camp supply kits in it, so I don't know if all of the food can go in there as well, but I'm assuming that it does, or at the very least, you can manually put food in there. On the same subject, I tested out how resting works with the food supplies, and many of you will be happy to know that you no longer need to retrieve all of your food and camp supplies from that chest that you've been storing them in your camp. From what I experienced, it automatically will show up when you click on the bedroll. You don't have to run back and forth anymore. Now, in regards to resting, I'm sure many of you saw the camp clothes option as it was demonstrated in the panel. So basically, when you go to your camp, your character and the other characters in your camp will put on their camp clothes. But this option is, of course, toggleable. I think I was also able to toggle it on when I was not at the camp as well, which is pretty cool for different situations. Now, the really cool thing in regards to these clothes is you will be able to go shopping in this game, especially when you make it to the city of Baldur's Gate, and you'll be able to browse for new types of clothes. And I'm also happy to inform all of you that you will be able to dye these clothes, but I'm not positive if you can dye armor though. I wish I knew. I'll try to find that answer for you all. And there's also going to be face paint in the game, which can actually change things up a little bit. It can serve somewhat as like a disguise self spell. Now, before I leave the topic of resting in camps, I do also want to let you all know that there are more official camps than just the river camp that we've experienced in early access. And Sven told us that yes, we can spend the night in taverns in the city, such as the Elf Song Tavern. As for items and magical items, there are so many items in this game, and I'll tell you what, so many of your character builds are going to be designed around these items. Cass from Fexter Life made it much further than I did, and I went over to his computer and he showed me some of the magical items that he picked up, and some of them are actually specific to the race that you're playing. And I also got to see legendary weapons in the game, and these are weapons that are represented with an orangish yellow border. And then there were also these purple bordered items, but I don't remember what the rarity was specifically called. Seeing the orange items, though, for the first time made me so excited, as it's definitely going to add a whole nother layer of excitement to finding and picking up loot in the game, especially in a 5th edition game where loot can be a little underwhelming when you compare it to other types of games out there. These items, of course, come with very powerful passive effects and things of that nature. Other quick things that I noticed are shoving an enemy now has a quick visual that appears above your character's head where you get to see your roll and whether or not you succeeded, just like how the other passive ability checks work in early access, such as when you're given a perception check. And I actually really liked this, as shoving a character in this game can be a really big, strong, powerful ability, and seeing a visual for that passive roll adds to the intensity of the moment. In combat, you can also no longer just circle around to the backside of an enemy and hit that hide button, as the game does not let you hide when you are in the threatened zone of a creature. I did forget to test out stealth in other places though to see if it's any different, so my bad. The UI for the game has, of course, been updated. Overall, it still looks and feels very similar to early access's version, but it definitely has been improved. I wasn't able to check everything, but I did notice things such as when you examine a creature, there are now 2 tabs, one for creature summary and the other for a more detailed view. Selecting spells for characters that use prepared spells is now laid out in a much nicer way, and more things of that nature. What did get a major rework though, and this is some of the best news I'm excited to report to you guys. This is one of my favorite aspects of many games, and that is the game's map. And holy crap, Larian did me proud here. So the map in the game now is great, and D&D players will be even happier than most others because it does look a bit like a D&D tabletop session map. I really wish I could show you all, but I don't have any footage. The only thing I can really do here is just zoom in on the mini map, which has also been updated. Just know that things are way more clear now, and the map no longer looks like a log that was infested with termites. Can't wait for you all to see it. You are going to absolutely love it. Moving on to the in-game world and choice and consequence. So my hands-on experience, yeah, I only got to experience the earlier parts of Act 1, but in the press conference, or the private presentation, whatever I'm supposed to call it, I got to see so much more. Let me just tell you right now that this game is insanely big. We already know, because it's public knowledge, that we will be, of course, going to the city of Baldur's Gate, and Sven showed off a bit of the city in the panel to you all, but I got to see much, much more than just that. So without spoiling specifics, let me just tell you about size. Sven took us through the Rivington district and also onto Worms Crossing Bridge, and these two district areas are not even in the city itself. They're way out in the outer city is what the lore calls it. And we already know that within the city walls, we're going to be able to visit the lower city, the upper city, and the undercity, which is like the sewers. The Rivington district had so much content in it, and so did Worms Crossing Bridge. So many characters that are walking around, so many buildings, and so many events that were just occurring. I do want to sidetrack for a second, though, and give a huge shout out to Bobby, the composer, whose music was so chef's kiss good in all of these new areas. I was actually fortunate to meet Bobby at a medieval themed dinner that we had after the panel, and he's honestly just such a great person from my interactions with him. So from what I saw in the Rivington district and Worms Crossing, I feel like these two areas could be an act on their own. I promise you all that there is going to be so much to do in this game, and those of you guys that don't like to miss content, you're going to be playing for hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of hours. These areas were all extremely detailed with a ton of NPCs and everything, just so much going on. I didn't see any dull looking areas like you might see in like Dragon Age 2. I'm getting in trouble for that comment. And there were also so many interesting, unique NPCs to interact with a ton of different creatures, unique creatures that you don't see that often, such as genies and civilized kobolds, dinosaurs, and so much more. I also asked Sven an overall city question, and that was, how many of the NPCs in the city are interactable? And he told me around half of them. So there are definitely crowd characters that give life to the city, but even at the 50% number, that leaves an insane amount of interactable NPCs. And I think I recall hearing that there are 2,000 NPCs in the city, but perhaps that was in the overall game. I can't actually remember. But even if it is the overall game and 50% of these NPCs are interactable, that leaves 1,000 NPCs to have dialogue with, and not just dialogue, fully voice acted cinematic scenes. Absolutely insane. Also, every animal that you see in the game is interactable. So if you're playing as a character that has speak with animals, such as a druid, your game is going to be different from many others. Or maybe you're playing a character that doesn't have speak with animals, but instead has the skill proficiency in animal handling. That's kind of more like a crocodile hunter type run, where you can kind of understand animal and creature behavior. I even watched Sven speak with a displacer beast, which was really cool. And hey, also on a different topic, but still about animals, the panther form for the druid I can now confirm for you. I also want you all to know, but I won't spoil the actual location, we will be able to go to a place that is far, far, far away from the Baldur's Gate Elturel area on Faerun. And I'm not even talking about different planes of existence. I'm talking about on the continent of Faerun. I got to see a short little bit where Sven was teleported somewhere, and it's a place that I don't think anyone would have ever expected to visit. Really cool. And then in the city itself, and I know that you all saw pieces of it in the panel, I think I heard Sven say that you can go into every building. So this game is just packed with content. And I'll tell you right now, if you felt like DOS 2 kind of fell off, you know, as the game went on, it seemed like there might be less content and the content maybe wasn't necessarily as good as the earlier on content. Well, Baldur's Gate 3 seems to have solved that problem. I don't think this is a spoiler. I'm going to tell you where I think each act will take place. But if that does feel like a spoiler for you, just turn your volume down right now for about 20 seconds and I'll have a red screen pop up when you're able to come back. So Act 1, of course, we already know mostly takes place in the areas between the cities of Baldur's Gate and Elturel. Act 2, I think, is going to be in the Shadow-Cursed lands. I won't expand on that anymore, but this is not really in the city itself, but probably closer to the city than the Act 1 area. I think it is possible that Act 2 could include that Rivington and Worms Crossing district that I was talking about earlier, but I don't know for sure. I'm leaning towards it not including those two areas. And then Act 3 will be the city itself, and that may or may not include Worms Crossing and Rivington. So the game is going to end with a lot of content, and I think it's going to be very good, exciting content. This kind of follows a similar structure to Baldur's Gate 1, where you end up in the city at the end of the game. And now on to choice and consequence, which I feel like I could talk about forever, but I won't do that because this video is already quite long. And then we'll end the video with romance. So the choice and consequence in this game is incredible. Now, it wasn't just what Sven showed us in the private presentation. It was also me noticing certain characters in the environment while he was playing that he wasn't even pointing out himself. And this would be way too spoilery to get into details about, but your choices in the way that you interact with characters, how you treat them, if you kill them, etc., will absolutely change how the game plays out. And you're going to see, results of your choices. You're going to see the consequence of your choices many hours later. And it just really makes everything feel so dynamic and connected. You might even find some characters that you met maybe in jail later on when you make it to the city or something like that, and maybe you liked that character and you want to help free them. Also in the panel and in the private presentation, we got to see the Baldur's Mouth newspaper, which will be reporting on current and ongoing events. This newspaper is the city's main source of news, and it actually changes depending on what you actually do in the game. So you should expect the citizens of Baldur's Gate to react to you in ways that make sense from the news that they have been consuming. And we also know that we can actually sneak into the Baldur's Mouth building and actually change the news that is being reported. I have no idea how that's going to work, but it's certainly something that many of us will be very excited to try out. There's so many different ways that you can choose to do things in Baldur's Gate 3, and many of you experienced that in early access, but it seems like, as you get further into the game, this only increases. So I saw small holes in some of the walls of the buildings near the city where if you use the spell Gaseous Form, you can go into, or maybe you're playing as a druid and you have a small animal wild shape form that will allow you to slip in, or maybe you don't have any of that and you have to barge in through the front door of a building. Or hey, why not check out the game's verticality and see if there's something on the roof by using your fly spell. It's absolutely insane the way that you can choose to try to handle things and get to certain places. Now, some of you may remember in my deep dive trailer a few weeks ago when I kind of said jokingly that I wouldn't be surprised if we could actually go underneath Worms Crossing Bridge. Well, from what I saw in the demonstration, it looks like that is actually going to be possible. Just to show you guys how crazy it is, how many different places you can go. Possible. I should also mention that you can end up in jail. And I know you can already kind of be a prisoner in early access, but I'm talking like real prisons this time, because we're getting, closer to the city or in the city itself. But if you end up finding yourself in a situation like that, it's really important to look at your character and your class and the choices that you made along the way, as spells such as Disguise Self, Misty Step, etc. can really help you escape those situations. And also, if you separate your party, maybe, 2 or 3 of your party members ended up in jail, but 2 of your party members are still like out in the city doing something else, especially if you're playing in multiplayer mode. Those characters can come try to basically break you out, which adds a whole nother level of, dynamic, engaging fun. And the last topic of this video is romance, but since my age restriction didn't tell me what I did wrong, and I was actually quite careful with what I showed, I'm cutting this section almost entirely. The point that I made in my previous upload was that Larian is taking game romance to an entirely new level, and you can even go on dates with characters as we saw Karlach do. So it's much more than just a physical type experience. And one of the devs did even mention marriage in the panel, but to what extent and what characters can do this, etc., I have no idea. We did also learn that you can romance multiple characters, but if you're like me, you already learned your lesson trying that in The Witcher 3. I think it's time to basically wrap this up now and give you guys a quick summary. I still feel like there's a million things that I could talk about, but honestly, my brain is no longer really functioning, and I just don't have the time to do it anymore with my surgery right on the horizon. Nothing major, just so you all know. I'll be back at it, hopefully, a day or two after, but still, it's still surgery. Please feel free to leave some of your questions down below, and if I can answer them, I will, as I will be resting for a day or two, and I should have the time to scroll on my phone. Now, overall, this was an incredible experience, and I still almost just can't accept that we have a game of this caliber coming to us in mere weeks. Of course, we still don't know how it's going to ultimately turn out, and perhaps we were just shown bits and pieces of the better content. But I don't know, man. I'm getting really good vibes from everything. And the Larian team really does seem like incredible, good people. I've been around them for quite a lot of time now, as I was also invited to one of the panel from Hells last year. And these are very talented and passionate developers. And I've heard some conversations and I've hung out with a few of them, outside of the more official setting, and I just hear pretty much only good things. So I feel pretty happy with supporting this company right now. And hopefully, you know, if BG3 turns out the way that it seems like it's going to turn out, we can just, you know, praise Larian Studios and try to make other companies want to be like Larian. I guess the one thing that could hold this game back at this point, I would say, would be potential bugs. I know with 100% certainty that there's going to be bugs in this game, as it's impossible to release a game of this size with this many permutations without bugs. And the only way I think they could have made it somewhat bug-free would have been to release all of the acts in early access, which I'm personally happy that they did not do that. So my hands-on experience, I didn't really get that far, so there weren't really any noticeable bugs, but I did talk to Cass from Fextra Life, who made it much further than I did, and he said he did encounter a few bugs. But keep in mind, we are also not playing the actual release 1.0 version, meaning we're playing the full game, but there's going to be patches before it comes out. I think the real question here is how many bugs and how and if any of them will be actually game breaking. With that said, I honestly believe that this game has a good chance of being one of the top RPGs, if not the top RPG of the decade. I know it's a little too early to be saying that, but it's just like this game is doing things that we've never ever seen before in the CRPG genre and even in the overall RPG genre. I really hope that the launch turns out good, and I think this will be a net win for everybody in the gaming industry. Even if you end up personally not liking the game for whatever reason, there's not many companies out there that are putting this much passion, time, and development into their games. A lot of games nowadays are just cash grabs, or the developers might not actually play the game themselves. Clearly not the case with Larian Studios. Thank you all so much for watching. Plenty of more BG3 videos to come. Feel free to join my community Discord. I will leave a link below in the video description. Also, feel free to follow me on Twitter or Instagram at WolfheartFPS if you want to help make me look better in the eyes of good sponsors, which are unfortunately kind of rare these days. And you all have a wonderful, wonderful day.